Welcome to this edition of Supervisor's Report with Nate Miley. I'm your host, Dr. Marshall Kamina. Welcome, Supervisor Miley.
Thank you, and excuse me for my casual attire today. I forgot I was going to be on TV 30, but you got me.
That's all right. Those are the best looking pajamas I've ever seen.
Well, it's a t-shirt.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
What topics or announcements would you like to share with our viewers today?
Well, the one topic that I think we'll cover, I can speak to it now, is this year we will be holding our 22nd annual Healthy Living Festival. This is an event held at the Oakland Zoo. It'll take place on September 25th. It is for older adults, that's seniors, that's our aging population. Anyone 55, 60, and older can participate and attend, but they need to register. And also, they can bring a guest. They can bring a family member, caregiver, a partner. But the point is, everyone needs to register. And this event is focused on healthy aging, successful aging, healthy living for older adults in Alameda County. We'll have close to 100 exhibitors. We'll have health screenings, flu shots. There'll be information and referral information as well. There'll be a nutritious free lunch. There'll be entry to the zoo so folks can walk around the zoo and socialize and visit with the animals. And there'll be entertainment. And this is all for older adults, sponsored by the United Seniors of Oakland and Alameda County, along with a number of other organizations and entities, including my office, the Office of County Supervisor Nate Miley. So we can get you the information about how to register to attend and participate, as well as if you'd like to be an exhibitor, a sponsor, we can also send you that information as well. The 22nd Annual Healthy Living Festival for older adults here in Alameda County. We do expect upwards of 3,000 attendees.
Wow. Well, that's a great name for us, the 22nd Festival for Living in the Zoo.
Healthy Living Festival at the Oakland Zoo.
Yes.
And we're very pleased to have the Oakland Zoo host the event for us, because everyone loves to go to the Oakland Zoo.
Do you ever remember Effie the elephant at the Oakland Zoo?
Oh, yes.
Congratulations, you win $100,000.
Oh, well, great. I'll take it.
Now, you, along with the rest of Alameda County's Board of Supervisors, worked hard to close a $68 million funding gap. Additionally, the Board of Supervisors was able to unanimously approve a $5.1 billion budget that avoided public employee layoffs and cuts to the critical safety net programs for seniors, such as the Alameda County Health System and over 270 community-based providers that depend on funding. I'm going to use what I hear from David Halbert sometimes. Unpack this for us, please.
Okay. Well, first of all, let me say the funding gap was $105 million, not 68. So let me just make sure that's on the record. $105 million funding gap. And, you know, the county was able to close this funding gap and approve a $5.1 billion budget. We've been very successful in doing this without any layoffs, without any cuts in services. County administrator is very skilled, working with our county agency and department heads at coming up with one time of savings so we can do this, as well as potential revenue enhancements. Typically, with a budget of $5 billion, $100 million deficit, funding deficit gap, isn't that, onerous. And so we were able to handle that relatively, I wouldn't say easily, but we were able to do that. The challenge is coming up in another week or so, we have to decide on how we're going to spend over $700 million in Measure W monies. Measure W money was a general tax. Voters voted on it in anticipation that it would be potentially used for homeless and housing. So we've been getting a lot of requests on how to use that money to address the housing and homeless crisis, but we'll also use that money probably to also address some of the other critical needs that we find in the county. For instance, there's because during COVID and the pandemic, we're able to get CARES Act and ARPA funding, and that provided a lot of funding for food, emergency food. And we found out that there was a need for more emergency food, but the COVID funding is going away. So with Measure W, we can use some of that money to help continue providing emergency food to folks who find it necessary throughout the county. There's also concerns about preventive mental health. With Prop 1 being implemented, the funding that we are using for mental health to prevent people from having to go into treatment and other things, some of that money will be drying up and having to go to Proposition 1. So I anticipate that we'll probably look to use some of Measure W money for preventive mental health as well. And there are other needs in the county. So what I suspect is that we were able to close a $105 million deficit, approve a $5 billion point one budget, but now we have to look at how we're going to use $700 million of Measure W monies to address housing and homelessness and deal with some other impacts the county's facing to shore up the safety net here in the county. The final thing I'll say is, we do have impacts that are occurring as a result of the federal government. The bill that was recently passed by the legislature, the Congress, it will do some significant changes to Medicare. And these changes to Medicare will affect Medi-Cal in terms of enrollment, eligibility, people having to constantly look at being enrolled, looking at employment and other things. And we'll need to put more resources there. And also how it's going to affect immigrant populations. So we need to look at Measure W potentially as a source to help us address some of those federal and state impacts that we anticipate coming as a result of the action Congress took in passing the most recent legislation that the Trump administration put forward.
Thank you. Now, recently, the Alameda County Board of Supervisors approved the 2025 to 2030 program plan and budget for Measure C. And you and I have never seen a Measure C that we didn't love, and this one is particularly good. Children's Health and Child Care Initiative. This is the culmination of decades of work and authorizes over $209 million in funding. Would you please tell us about this important program?
Sure. The voters in Alameda County have been very generous. They passed Measure W, that was a general tax, and they also passed Measure C. Measure C was a special tax dedicated to early childhood development. And we recently had First Five, which is the organization that has been tapped to administer Measure C, come to the Board of Supervisors with the 5-year expenditure plan for Measure C. Measure C, if my memory is correct, is for 20 years, I believe. So we'll be collecting this tax for 20 years to help provide cutting-edge services to address the child care crisis here in Alameda County. And I wouldn't quite call it a crisis, but if we put money into early childhood development, of which this is about, from from roughly the ages of infancy to 3rd grade, the likelihood of young people turning out to be successful, contributing members of our society is completely enhanced. And so that's what Measure C is directed at, providing money for child care facilities to be opened up, to support child care facilities, to provide a living wage for those folks who work at child care facilities, also to provide funding to improve child care facilities. So all of that's part of the Measure C package. And so every 5 years, First Five will come to the Board of Supervisors with a plan on how they think we should allocate the Measure C money. But it should be mentioned, to develop this plan, there's an extensive community engagement process that they follow, getting input from a lot of sectors in our society that are involved with childhood development. And so it isn't a plan that they just generate out of thin air. They go through an extensive process and eventually it gets to the board for approval. So I'm really pleased that we have the funding for Measure C, because both Measure C and Measure W were held up by the Taxpayers Association. They sued on both of those ballot measures, but the county won both of those ballot measures, and that's why we now have this largesse of Measure C monies for childhood development that we've appropriated for the next 5 years, as well as Measure W, which we're looking to appropriate in the very near future to address some other safety net services and needs, and a lot of that going towards homelessness and housing.
Well, thank you for that information. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back on this edition of Supervisor's Report with Nate Miley in just a moment. Welcome back to this edition of Supervisor's Report with Supervisor Nate Miley. I'd like to speak, if you don't mind, about the Santa Rita Jail. Now, the Board of Supervisors recently voted 4-1 to provide funding to the 36-year-old Santa Rita Jail. It's for a 5-year project focused on deferred maintenance and other vital repairs. Please tell us about this project. Were you the one of the 4-1 vote?
Yeah, no, I wasn't. No, I was part of the 4.
Okay.
I was part of the majority.
Then by all means,
Yes.
go ahead.
Yes. Well, being on the Board of Supervisors now for 25 years, I recognize the importance of having Santa Rita Jail equipped and maintained. And that's what this was about. We don't want people who are suffering from mental illness and disabilities and things like that to end up at Santa Rita Jail. And obviously, we're working to make sure that Santa Rita Jail is provided with the necessary structures and staffing to ensure quality services when folks are detained there. But we need to look at also maintaining the jail itself. And there was a lot of deferred maintenance that needed to take place at Santa Rita Jail. And that's what this money was about, to get at some of that deferred maintenance that needed to take place to improve conditions out of Santa Rita Jail. It was a hefty, figure, but that's what happens when you defer maintenance and you don't take care of it on a regular, ongoing basis. It builds up and it becomes more costly. And so recognizing the need to ensure that the jail is maintained, is a quality jail, if folks end up being detained there, and in fact, we do have a number of folks who are detained there, and some folks are detained there longer than others, quite frankly. We need to ensure that we had an adequate jail there. There are people who just balk at anything going into the sheriff's office for any type of, let's say, services or anything out at Santa Rita Jail. But I think the Board of Supervisors, 4 of us, recognize that we have a responsibility to ensure officer safety, the safety of non-civilian personnel, as well as quality of services for those detainees at Santa Rita Jail. And that's what this was all about. Recently, to dovetail, the board also had a 4-1 vote on the sheriff's drone policy program, because the sheriff's department now has drones that it wants to deploy. And they will be deploying these drones in the unincorporated area. And that will help to improve response time, because a drone can get to a scene in a matter of minutes, whereas it could take deputies much longer. And in some cases, it can determine whether or not a deputy even needs to be dispatched when you use a drone. And then obviously drones are good for other types of uses, emergency services and things of that nature. If it's a fire or something that's occurred, it's a search and rescue, you need drones. So the board, in a 4-1 vote, just recently approved the sheriff's drone program for the unincorporated area. And I was pleased to be part of that 4-1 vote. it will all, we need to have technology that will help our law enforcement personnel. And the drone program is another tool in the toolbox for the sheriff's department to deploy. We're very concerned about, privacy, but there will be safeguards built in, so we won't be impeding on people's privacy, but we will be using it to ensure public safety in the unincorporated area. That's where the drone program is deployed. And the final thing I would say about the drone program with the sheriff's department is, since the sheriff has responsibility for, let's say, assistance with other jurisdictions throughout the 16 county area here in California, being able to deploy drones if necessary will also be an important feature of the drone program that the sheriff can use if mutual aid is needed because of a fire or some type of other, situation. The drones will be able to be used, And I've also asked the sheriff's department about seeing how we can utilize our drones in the drone program to prevent criminal activity, because criminals are now looking to try to utilize drones. So we need to be on top of that, and they've told me there'll be a way of detecting unauthorized use of drones as well.
It's important for us to remember that the jail itself is a consortium of not only the local government and the county government, but the federal government, and I think you made that point quite nicely. And speaking of the jail, I have to commend, and I hope you feel the same way, the wonderful job Sheriff Yesenia Sanchez is doing with that jail.
Yes, she is. She's on top of it. That is her number one priority.
We have a few minutes. Would you like to update us about how the Alameda County Fair went this year? It obviously was different.
Yeah, well, the reports I've received, and I went to the fair one evening, and it was very well attended. I think this year, one notable thing is the weather was not too bad this year. I mean, it was hot, but it wasn't exceedingly hot. So that was a nice change. In addition, we were concerned that with horse racing not being at the fair, that would have an impact on attendance and on the resources coming into the fair. But as I understand it, attendance was up, and also the fair did very well financially. So I think, despite the fact that we didn't have horse racing, the fair still was able to sustain itself in a healthy fashion. I'm not discouraged at the moment about horse racing not being there, because I'm encouraged that hopefully we'll be able to bring horse racing back. But if we can't, we know we can put on a quality fair without horse racing.
Well, when TV 30 was there, we were absolutely flabbergasted at the number of people who came out, and they were singing, they were dancing. There were so many exhibits that, you know what? For a long time, I forgot that the racing was there, but I don't mean that to be that it shouldn't be. So I really feel the same way you do. Is there anything else that you'd like to mention before we take off?
I know. I just appreciate once again having a chance to speak to the viewers of TV 30, and I'm very, very, very thankful that I have an opportunity to share on various topics of interest in Alameda County. And once again, I just want to remind people, the Healthy Living Festival, September 25th at the Oakland Zoo. Contact my office to get information. We can also send information to TV 30, and they can provide that information to you as well. But we welcome one and all who are aging adults, 55 and older, to come to our 22nd annual Healthy Living Festival. You won't forget it.
I always look forward to this because you and I were childhood people at Oakland, California at the same time. And those were wonderful days along with the Oakland Oaks.
Yes.
Well, thank you for being with us today. I'm Dr. Marshall Kamina. Join us for the next episode of Supervisor's Report with Nate Miley right here on Tri-Valley TV. Thank you all for watching.